My name is Mark Ellison, and the night everything finally broke didn't feel dramatic at first. It felt ordinary. Too ordinary. Christmas Eve in the Midwest doesn't announce itself with fireworks. It creeps in quietly. Snow packed into the corners of driveways. Wind scraping dry branches against siding. Porch lights glowing soft yellow, like everyone agreed to keep things calm for one night. We live outside Peoria, Illinois. A place where people remember your parents longer than they remember your achievements. Where the cashier at the grocery store knows which church you attend without ever asking. Where reputations aren't built online. They're built slowly, in small moments, and destroyed the same way. I'm 57 years old. I've lived my whole adult life by rules nobody applauds. Show up. Pay early. Don't borrow what you can't return. Don't put your name on something you don't control. At this age, your name isn't just a word. It's your history. That night, the house smelled like butter and onions, turkey skin crisping in the oven, and something sweet, pie maybe, burning just enough to make the smoke alarm threaten, but not commit. Christmas music played low from a speaker on the counter. Old songs. Bing Crosby. Nat King Cole. The kind my father used to hum while pretending not to know the words. I changed my shirt twice. Not because anything was wrong with the first one, because I wanted to look right. Respectable. Like a man who belonged where he was about to sit. Susan was already stressed. She always was when family came over. She wiped counters that were already clean. Adjusted placemats by half an inch. Asked if the potatoes were salted enough, then added salt anyway. I helped where I could. That's always been my role. Quiet support. Behind-the-scenes fixes. The man who makes things run smoothly so nobody else has to think about them. The table was crowded before dinner even started. Susan's sister. Her husband. 2 grandkids bouncing between chairs. An extra folding chair dragged in from the garage. And at the head of the table sat the chair. My father's chair. Solid oak. Heavy. One arm darker where his hand rested every evening for years. A faint squeak in the back leg if you leaned too far left. When my father was sick, really sick, he sat in that chair by the window of the assisted living center, watching the parking lot like it owed him something. After he passed, I brought it home. I tightened the joints myself. Sanded the arms until my hands cramped. Refinished it in walnut stain because that's what he liked. I didn't do it to make it pretty. I did it because fixing things was how my father loved people. When Susan and I married, second marriage for both of us, I brought the chair into her split level like it belonged there. And for years, nobody questioned it. Holidays, birthdays, Sunday dinners. That's where the host sits. That's how I was raised. And whether anyone liked it or not, I had been hosting more than most. 2 summers earlier, Susan's kitchen started falling apart. Cabinets sagging. Faucet dripping all night. Lighting so bad she hated cooking after sunset. She joked about it, but I could see the embarrassment every time someone came over. So I used my savings. Menards runs every Saturday for a month. Cabinet boxes. Hinges. New sink. Better lights over the counter. Nothing flashy. Just solid. Respectable. The kind of upgrades you make because you plan to stay. Susan cried when she saw it finished. Put her hand over her mouth. Said, "Now I can have family over without being embarrassed." I believed her. Her son Ethan never called me dad. Just Mark. I didn't push it. I wasn't trying to replace anyone. I helped him anyway. Taught him basics. Lent tools. Covered bills just this once. Smoothed things over when Susan asked me to keep the peace. I thought patience would come back around. Then Ethan's biological father, Rick, started showing up again. Loud. Confident. The kind of man who acted like he owned whatever room he walked into. Susan said he'd been mostly absent when Ethan was a kid. He's trying to make up for lost time, she said. What that meant was gifts, money he didn't have, and letting Ethan believe Rick was the only man who mattered. Rick insisted on coming to Christmas dinner. Susan said it was important to Ethan. I said, so am I. She gave me that tight smile that meant, please don't make this harder. Let's just have a nice night, she said. By 5 o'clock the house was too warm from the oven. The windows fogged. Plates stacked. Glasses sweating onto placemats. Someone turned the music up just enough to drown out small talk. Ethan arrived last, of course. Rick right behind him. There he is, Ethan said, slapping Rick on the shoulder. The man of the hour. Rick grinned at me like I was hired help. Smells good in here, he said. We all pitch in, I replied. He chuckled like that was adorable. We sat. Plates clanked. Someone said a rushed prayer. I reached for the carving knife, my dad's old one, thin and sharp. That's when Ethan stood up. His hand snapped out and grabbed the back of my father's chair. "Hold up," he said. I looked at him, confused. "What are you doing?" His eyes were bright, mean in a quiet way. He nodded toward Rick. "That seat belongs to my dad," he said. "Get up." I laughed, not because it was funny, because my brain refused to catch up. "Ethan," I said quietly. "Don't." He shoved me. Not a joke, not playful. Both hands, chest and shoulder. The chair scraped. My boot caught the rug. My hip slammed into the hardwood, so hard the air left my lungs in a sound I didn't recognize. Pain shot up my side like electricity. Gravy exploded across my shirt and splattered onto the floor. Someone gasped. A fork hit a plate with a sharp ping. A kid whispered, "Mom?" Ethan stood over me, breathing hard, like he'd finally proved something. Susan didn't look down. She grabbed napkins. She wiped the gravy off the floor, like the spill was the problem, not the man on it. That was the moment something in me went quiet. Not rage, not tears, something colder, something final. I pushed myself up on one hand. The hardwood felt icy. My hip screamed. My pride burned worse. I looked at Susan, waited for my name. She kept her eyes on the floor. In that blinking silence, Christmas lights, held breaths, fake normalcy. I finally understood something I'd refused to see for years. To them, I wasn't family. I was maintenance. I stood slowly, straightened my jacket, swallowed the pain, and walked out into the cold without saying a word. Behind me, dinner continued. And that was just the beginning. I didn't go home right away. I drove with no destination, heater blasting, radio off. Christmas songs felt like lies. The kind you don't argue with, you just refuse to listen to them. I ended up at a gas station on the edge of town, the kind that stays open because truckers need somewhere warm at 11 p.m. I sat in a booth with burnt coffee and watched my reflection in the dark window. Gravy had dried stiff on my shirt. I hadn't noticed when it stopped feeling embarrassing and started feeling symbolic. My phone buzzed again. Susan. I let it ring. Then Ethan. Then Susan again. I didn't answer. Not because I was trying to punish anyone, because I knew if I picked up, I'd hear apologies shaped like excuses. Soft voices asking me to be reasonable. Promises that meant nothing once the moment passed. I went home. My home. The small ranch I'd bought decades earlier, long before Susan, long before I believed blended family meant blended responsibility. The house smelled like nothing. No food. No music. Just quiet. I changed out of the stained shirt and checked my hip in the bathroom mirror. Purple was already blooming, wide as my palm. At 57, your body doesn't negotiate. It just reports damage. I sat in my recliner with an ice pack and stared at a blank TV screen. That's when my phone buzzed again. A text from Ethan. "You embarrassed my dad. You should have just moved. That chair isn't yours." I read it twice. My hand tightened around the phone until my knuckles ached. I didn't write back. I set it face down on the table like it could poison me if I stared too long. Around midnight, I tried to sleep. Every time I shifted, my hip flared and replayed the shove. Ethan's hands. Susan's eyes on the floor. The scrape of the chair like it was being dragged out of my life. I got up and made coffee. Strong. Plain. The way my father drank it. I stood at the kitchen window watching snow drift under the streetlight and told myself what reasonable people tell themselves. It's just a chair. Families get weird on holidays. Let it go. But it wasn't the chair. It was the sentence Ethan had said out loud. The one everyone else had been living quietly. You don't belong. At 2:13 a.m., Susan finally texted. "Tom, please." He didn't mean it. He's under stress. "Can you just come back and talk?" I stared at the message until the screen dimmed. He didn't mean it. Like shoving someone to the floor happens accidentally. Like, get out, slips out when you're tired. Like wiping gravy off hardwood matters more than the man bleeding dignity onto it. I didn't answer. Just after 6, my phone chimed with a sound I hadn't heard in years. A credit alert. My stomach dropped before I even opened it. Change detected. My score hadn't dipped, it had fallen. The kind of drop that doesn't come from being late on a utility bill. New inquiry. New account activity. I sat back in the chair, suddenly colder than the snow outside. In my world, that didn't happen unless something had been opened in your name. And the only people who had access to my information were family. By 6:20 a.m., my phone was buzzing nonstop. Susan. Ethan. Susan again. An unfamiliar local number. I didn't answer yet. I just watched the screen light up and go dark, over and over, like a warning signal. 23 missed calls in 10 minutes. I opened Ethan's voicemail first. "Tom, call me back," he said, fast and sharp. "It's some stupid banking thing. They're acting crazy. Just call me." Another voicemail, 2 minutes later. "Listen, it's not what it looks like. I just need you to talk to somebody. They said your name is on something. Just call me." The third voicemail was different. Less swagger. More fear. "They froze my account. I can't even get gas. Just fix it, man." Then he slipped. "Dad," he started, then corrected himself. Tom. Please." All those years he couldn't spare me a dad. But the second money got tight, his mouth reached for it like muscle memory. I listened to Susan's voicemail next. Her voice shook. "Tom, please answer. Kyle's freaking out. There's something with the credit union. Can you just pick up?" Then the unknown number called again. This time I answered. "Mr. Ellison?" A woman said, professional but careful. "This is Marcy from Hawthorne Community Credit Union. I'm calling regarding an urgent matter on your account. Are you able to speak privately?" "I'm alone," I said. "Thank you. There's been a delinquency notice issued on a personal loan where you're listed as the guarantor." I blinked. "I'm listed as the what?" "A co-signer," she said gently. "The loan is past due. Our system flagged your credit profile." My chest tightened. "How much?" I asked. $18,400. Opened 8 months ago. 2 missed payments. 18,000 wasn't groceries. It wasn't gas. It was a truck. It was a season of bad decisions. "And this affects my credit," I said, even though I already knew. "Yes, because your name is attached." I didn't co-sign anything. There was a pause, the kind that says she'd heard that sentence before. "The loan file includes your name and a signature attributed to you," she said. "If you believe that signature isn't yours, we have procedures." "What procedures?" "A fraud review. The fastest way is for you to come in. We open at 8, but I can meet you sooner if you're able." "I'll be there." I didn't call Susan. I didn't call Ethan. I put on jeans, flannel, work boots, like armor, and stepped into the cold. Snow crunched under my feet. My hip protested, but I welcomed the pain. It kept me honest. The credit union parking lot was mostly empty, sky gray as old steel. I sat in my truck for a moment staring at my reflection in the windshield, gray at the temples, eyes tired, jaw tight. I thought about the chair. Then I walked in. Marcy met me in the lobby. Kind eyes. Cardigan. A voice that didn't rush me. She led me into a small office that smelled like copier toner and burnt coffee. She slid a folder across the desk. On top was the loan summary. Ethan's name. Susan's name. And under guarantor. Mark Ellison. My stomach rolled. She turned the screen toward me. "Here's the signature page." My name sat at the bottom in black ink. Except it wasn't mine. Close, from far away. But wrong in the details. The loop on the M I never used. The flourish at the end I'd never had. "And it's signed as Mark," she added quietly. "But the handwriting spells Marcus. Do you ever sign that way?" My throat tightened. "My father called me that," I said. "I haven't signed it since I was a kid." She nodded once. Not surprised. "Who had access to your information?" she asked. I stared at the screen. "My wife." She opened a drawer and placed a form on the desk. "This is a statement of fraud," she said. "If you sign it, we open an investigation. Once we do, we can't close it quietly. There may be legal consequences." My phone buzzed on the desk. Ethan again. "You don't have to decide right now," Marcy said softly. I looked at the pen. At my father's voice frozen in someone else's handwriting. "I'm not deciding out of anger," I said. "I'm deciding because my name means something." I signed. And somewhere between the ink drying and the folder closing, the family I thought I had began to fall apart. I didn't go home after the credit union. I didn't go back to Susan's house either. I drove until the sun rose fully, turning the snowbanks along the road a dirty pink, and then I pulled into a parking lot I knew would be open and quiet, the VFW on the south side of town. Not because I wanted company, but because it was one of the only places left where people understood one simple fact. A man's name is not something you borrow. The lot was mostly empty. A couple trucks. A flag snapping hard in the cold wind. Inside, the air smelled like stale coffee and floor cleaner and old wood. A few men sat at the bar watching a muted TV that nobody cared about. Frank Delaney was there, like he always was in the mornings, reading a newspaper like the world still made sense. 72, retired attorney, shoulders slumped but mind sharp. He didn't talk much unless you gave him a reason. I slid into the booth across from him and set the folder down on the table. He looked at it, then at me. "Bad holiday?" he asked. I didn't answer that. I just opened the folder and pushed the signature page toward him. Frank adjusted his glasses, leaned in, read everything, then tapped the paper with one finger. "That's not you," he said. "No," I replied. "That's someone trying to wear my skin." Frank sat back slowly. "Tom," he started, caught himself. "Mark, you understand what this means." "I understand exactly what it means," I said. He nodded once. "Then you have to decide if you're the kind of man who mops this up, or the kind of man who lets consequences do their job." I stared at the table for a moment. My hip pulsed with every heartbeat. My hands were steady now. That surprised me. "I'm tired," I said quietly. "I'm tired of being the mop." Frank's mouth twitched. Not quite a smile, more like approval. "Good," he said. "Then do it clean. Document everything. Don't threaten. Don't bargain. Just tell the truth and let the system move." As I stood to leave, my phone buzzed again. "Susan." I didn't answer. Not yet. Because I already knew what her voice would sound like. Soft, smoothing, full of panic and hope that I would rescue them the way I always had. And I was done being the rescue. The first confrontation. Around noon, I drove to Susan's house anyway. Not to fight. To see what they did when they realized I wouldn't fold. The driveway was packed. Ethan's truck, Rick's SUV, Susan's sister's minivan. The house looked like it always did. Wreath on the door, lights in the windows. But it felt different, like a stage set built on top of rot. I walked in without knocking. Ethan was in the living room pacing, phone in hand, jaw tight. Rick stood near the kitchen entryway, arms crossed, like he was guarding his territory. Susan was in the kitchen with a dish towel twisted in her hands like she could wring the situation dry. The air smelled like reheated leftovers and cold coffee. Ethan spun when he saw me. "There he is," he snapped. "You happy now?" They froze everything. "I can't access my account. I can't do anything. I can't." He kept talking, but I wasn't listening to the words. I was watching the behavior, the entitlement, the certainty that I existed to solve his problems. Rick stepped forward, voice loud and confident. "You don't do this to family," he barked. I looked at him. Really looked. This was the man Ethan wanted at the head of the table. The real father. The man who'd been absent for years, but still had enough swagger to act like he owned the room. And he was calling me disloyal. I asked one question. "Why is my name on an $18,000 loan?" Susan flinched like I'd slapped her. Ethan's mouth opened, then closed. Rick's eyes darted, quick, calculating. Susan spoke first, barely above a whisper. "I was trying to help," she said. I turned toward her. "You signed my name." She swallowed, eyes shiny. "You would have said no?" She whispered, like that explained everything. That's when something snapped in me. Not anger, not yelling, just clarity. "Exactly," I said. "I would have said no." Ethan stepped forward, voice rising. "So what? You're married to her. You're supposed to help. You always help." There it was. The truth said out loud. Not love. Not respect. Expectation. Rick laughed, a short, ugly sound. "Come on," he said. "Don't act like this is the end of the world. Just tell them you signed it. We'll pay it. We just need time." I stared at him. "You don't get time using my name." Ethan exploded. "You think you're some hero?" he shouted. "You made my mom a criminal. You're ruining everything because you got your feelings hurt over a chair." I felt the room tilt slightly, like the whole house leaned into that word. Feelings. Because that's how people like Ethan reframe harm. They turn fraud into a misunderstanding. They turn a shove into a moment. They turn a man on the floor into drama. I didn't argue. I didn't raise my voice. I just said, "I'm not ruining anything. I'm refusing to lie." Then I turned and walked out again. And behind me, I heard Susan call my name. Not as an apology, as a lifeline. The calls turned ugly. By that evening, my phone looked like a blinking warning light. Ethan called 12 times. Susan called 9. Rick called from an unknown number twice. When I finally listened to Ethan's voicemails, the pattern was clear. First, anger. "Fix this, Mark. Fix it now. They're acting crazy." Then panic. "Listen, it's not what it looks like. Just talk to someone. Tell them it was you." Then bargaining. "I swear I'll pay you back. I'll pay every dime." Rick said he's got it. Then guilt. "You're doing this to Mom." Then something colder. "You think you're gonna win?" he hissed in the last voicemail. "You're a guest here. Always were. You'll die alone." That one sat in my stomach like a stone. Not because it hurt, because it was the first honest thing he'd said all year. Susan's voicemails were different. She didn't threaten. She didn't scream. She pleaded. Tom, Mark, please, she said, voice shaking. I didn't know what else to do. He was crying. Rick was yelling. I panicked. Please just make it stop. Make it stop. That was her entire marriage strategy, distilled into 2 words. Avoid conflict. Smooth it over. Ask Mark to take the hit. I didn't answer. Instead, I did what Frank told me. I saved everything. Every text. Every voicemail. Every timestamp. Because I finally understood what I'd been refusing to accept. If people are willing to forge your name, they are willing to rewrite the story of what happened too. The investigator. 2 days later, I got a call from the fraud investigator assigned to my case. Calm voice. Official tone. Mr. Ellison, this is Investigator Harlan. I'm following up on the fraud statement you filed. I'd like to meet today. We met in a beige conference room at the credit union. Stale coffee. Fluorescent lights. A small recorder placed on the table like a neutral witness. Harlan asked me to describe Christmas Eve. I told him exactly what happened, without drama. The chair. The shove. Susan's silence. The calls. The loan. Then he pushed 3 sheets of paper toward me. Sign your name 10 times, he said. Normal signature. My pen moved without hesitation. Mark Ellison. Mark Ellison. Mark Ellison. Harlan compared my signatures to the loan file. It wasn't close. This is not a match, he said flatly. He asked who had access to my information. My wife, I said. And her son. Harlan nodded like he'd heard that before too. This will be forwarded to the county, he said. That doesn't automatically mean charges. But be prepared for legal follow-up. Prepared. That word followed me all the way back to my truck. Because prepared was how I lived. And it was how I was going to survive this. The last attempt to control me. That night, Susan showed up at my ranch house. She stood on my porch holding a grocery bag like a peace offering. Crackers I liked. Peppermint tea I'd mentioned once. Her face was swollen from crying. Hair pulled back like she hadn't slept. Can I come in? She whispered. I stepped aside. She sat on the edge of my couch, like she wasn't sure she deserved to touch anything. I messed up, she said. I let the silence stretch until it had room for truth. She started explaining. Ethan was stressed. Rick pressured him. She panicked. She thought it was temporary. She thought it would all be okay. I listened. Really listened. And then I said the sentence that had been building in me since I hit the floor. You didn't panic, I said. You chose the option where you could lose me quietly. Her face crumpled. That's not true, she whispered, but even she didn't sound convinced. Susan, I said, voice steady. When I was on the floor, you didn't even look at me. She covered her mouth and started crying harder. I didn't want to pick sides, she said. That's picking a side, I replied. She shook her head, desperate. I can fix this, she pleaded. I'll make payments. I'll sell things. This isn't about money, I said. She looked up, confused. It's about my name, I continued. My body, my dignity, the fact that I am not your family's emergency fund. She went still, like she'd never heard me speak like that. Because she hadn't. I'd always been the man who swallowed the pain to keep things calm. And calm had been killing me. The court date. 2 weeks later, a letter arrived with the county seal. Date. Time. Courtroom number. I stared at it in my kitchen like it was written in a foreign language, even though I understood exactly what it meant. This wasn't a family argument anymore. This was a system. And systems don't care about Christmas. They don't care about guilt. They don't care about he didn't mean it. They care about signatures, intent, and consequences. The courthouse was old limestone and sharp air. Metal detectors. Echoing hallways. People speaking quietly like volume could change outcomes. Susan sat on a wooden bench with her hands clasped so tightly her knuckles were white. Ethan paced in a suit that didn't fit his anger. Rick sat beside him, smug, like he still believed he could talk his way out of anything. When Ethan saw me, he leaned forward and hissed, "You really doing this?" I looked him right in the eyes. "I'm not doing anything," I said. "I'm answering for my name." Susan reached for my sleeve. "Mark, please," she whispered. "Tell them it was a misunderstanding. Please." I lowered my voice. "I'm not lying," I said. "Not anymore." Her hand fell away like it had been burned. The bailiff called our case. We walked into the courtroom. The judge looked down at the file, then up at me. "Mr. Ellison, you are contesting a guarantor signature on a personal loan. You claim your identity was used without consent. Correct? Yes, Your Honor. Ethan's attorney stood, confident. Your Honor, this is a family misunderstanding. Mrs. Ellison believed she had permission. The judge raised a hand. Belief is not consent. The room went quiet. The judge turned to Ethan. Mr. Carter, she said, did Mr. Ellison agree to co-sign this loan? Ethan's eyes flicked to Rick. He swallowed. Not directly, he admitted. Marcy testified. Dates, amounts, missed payments. Investigator Harlan confirmed the signature mismatch. Then Ethan's attorney tried to steer it back into a holiday argument. Mr. Ellison, he asked, isn't this really about a Christmas dispute? I felt everyone watching. And I answered calmly. There was a dispute, I said. And I was shoved to the floor. But I'm here because my name was used to take a loan I never agreed to. The judge nodded once. Then she asked, do you have evidence regarding intent? I did. Because I stopped being the mop and started being the record. I handed a flash drive to the bailiff. Audio from my doorbell camera, I said. Recorded outside Mrs. Ellison's home the night of Christmas Eve. Ethan's head snapped up. What? He blurted, too loud. The judge didn't even look at him. Proceed, she said. The speaker crackled. Wind noise. A door closing. And then Ethan's voice, laughing, casual and cruel. He'll pay it, Ethan said. He always pays it. Rick's voice followed. The old man's got good credit. He won't let it drop. He'll fix it. Ethan laughed again. He's not family, he said. He's maintenance. The courtroom went so still it felt like oxygen got sucked out. Susan's hand flew to her mouth. Ethan's face drained of color. Rick sat back, suddenly less confident. The judge clicked the file closed. That is sufficient, she said. Then she looked at Ethan. Those statements indicate you expected Mr. Ellison to absorb a debt without consent. That demonstrates intent. Ethan's attorney started to protest. The judge raised her hand again. No. Then she turned to Susan. Mrs. Ellison, she said, firm but not cruel. You placed your spouse at financial risk. This matter will proceed under the appropriate statutes. Outside the courthouse, the cold air hit my lungs sharp and clean. My hip still hurt. My heart still hurt. But I stood straighter than I had in years. Ethan wanted me out of a chair. Instead, he pushed me into a room where the truth had a microphone. The quiet revenge. People think revenge is yelling, screaming, breaking things. It isn't. Real revenge is letting someone's own words become evidence. Real revenge is refusing to save them from the consequences of what they chose. That week, the town went back to normal. Snow piled along curbs. People buying milk. Talking about weather. Like nothing had happened. But my life didn't go back. Susan moved out for a while, staying with her sister. She walked through the house like a ghost when she came to get clothes. Eyes down, quiet. Ethan didn't call me again. Not with threats, anyway. 3 weeks later, I got one text. I didn't think you'd actually do it. I stared at the message for a long time. And then I typed back. Neither did I. Until you forced my hand. He didn't respond. In March, Susan and I finalized our separation. No screaming divorce. No dramatic scene. Just paperwork, signatures, and the dull ache of accepting what I should have accepted years ago. On the last day, I went back to her house one final time. Not to fight, not to gloat. To pick up my father's chair. It sat in the corner of the living room like it had been punished for existing. I ran my hand along the worn armrest. The wood was smooth under my palm, familiar as a handshake. Susan stood behind me, twisting her hands. You can take it, she whispered. I'm taking it home, I said, where it belongs. That night, I placed the chair by my living room window in my ranch house. I made coffee the way my father drank it, strong, plain, and I sat down. The chair creaked once, soft and familiar, like it was clearing its throat. Outside, snow fell quietly under the streetlight. And for the first time in years, the silence didn't feel like being ignored. It felt like peace.